My name is Fran Fleming. I'm actually the national sales director now. They'll make that correction, moving on up to VP. Um, I've been in this industry now for 40 years. I started in 1978 with Prudential Insurance. And that my background has really helped me to appreciate legacy because I've sold different types of insurances throughout my career. I've done straight life insurance. I've done pre-need for 10 years. And so when I was introduced to final expense, I knew that this would be my final journey in my career, because this is what I'm going to do now. They say senior life for life. Well, it's senior life for life. It's because of legacy. Legacy, and I'll share this with you, when I'm giving my presentation. It actually helps the family, truly helps the family on the worst day of their life. So, as I said, I've been in this industry for 40 years. Started with Prudential Insurance, and actually, I broke a 102-year-old company record with that company by being the first female rookie of the year they ever had. But I can really appreciate Senior Life and the opportunity that they have given me, because no other company has ever given me the opportunity to build my agency through that company and make it possible for me to leave this legacy for my children's children's children. And that's that generational wealth that God tells us to leave our children. That's scripture. So I'm really proud and honored to be a part of Legacy Insurance, Legacy and Senior Life and Consolidated Planning. And I thank Dr. Burns so much for coming to Houston. I'll never forget the time. It was March of 2019. And I'm glad that I attended and listened to him and followed his system. And his system does work, because in the 2 short years, I've followed the system. I'm building an agency here in Houston. We're making things happen here. And for me to have moved up the ladder so quickly, and I'm still climbing this ladder, I know that it's because I follow the system. And I share this with everyone. McDonald's has a system. I've had McDonald's fries in Paris, and I've had McDonald's fries in Houston, and they taste the same. So I'll tell you, if you follow this system that Dr. Burns and Sharaka Cook and Mike Burns have put in place for us, don't try to change anything. They've already made it, and they've proven that it works, because they are now in millionaire status. And I'm going to one day join them, because I'm going to follow in their footsteps. So with that said, are we ready to go with legacy? Because that's
Yes,
what it's
ma'am.
about. It's about legacy. When I
Yes,
started,
ma'am.
I didn't, when I started, I didn't have the opportunity that you all have now, because we were here in Houston, and actually my upline, Helen Blocker Adams, we were doing it via phone, not Zoom, not FaceTime or any of that. And of course, at that time, she was still working as a college professor, but she was helping me every step along the way. I wanted to get the understanding of legacy, because I knew if I understand legacy, I really want to understand this. But all I ever heard was about the 3 things that legacy did. Well, with my sales background, I didn't quite understand, but I was able to go in and wing it and get through and make the sale. But I kept hearing it over and over. And this is what you have to do. You have to hear this over and over and over. And then one day it's going to click and you'll say, I got it. Because even though legacy is doing 3 things, you want to be able to get that understanding here, get it here, and then move it into your heart. Because when you move it into your heart, you're going to be able to bring it out here, and you will be able to relate to the family. Because our target market are the seniors. Most of them have lost a loved one. They have experienced what it's like to walk into that funeral home and not know what to expect, not even have time to grieve, because they have to go on and take care of the order of business. And so their understanding when you tell them that Legacy is here for the rescue, and you're able to explain to them exactly what Legacy is going to do for them on the worst day of their family's life, when they have lost you, Mrs. Jones. You know what you went through. Now, I was fortunate to be in pre-need for 10 years, working directly at the funeral home. So I understand every aspect of what's done from the moment that family walks into the door. And so this is what I want to share with you, because when you can tell them and really bring back to their remembrance what they went through, then they're going to really appreciate Legacy. And once they understand Legacy, everything else just falls into place. I've had someone ask me, well, how do you get to the sales part of senior life? Well, it just flows because you've told them what Legacy is going to do. And we're not there to replace what they have. We want them to know that $50,000 policy you have, we're here to show you how you're going to save thousands of dollars. We're going to save that $50,000 for you, and it's going to your family, because that's who it was meant to go to. That's a life insurance policy, and that's just what it says. Life insurance is for those you're leaving behind. So we don't want to have you take that policy into the funeral home, because I know what will happen when you take it in there. Now, they're in business to make money, and I'm not, and that's their job. But unfortunately, they're making money on the worst day of your family's life, Mrs. Jones. So let me tell you what Legacy is going to do for you. Now, I understand you told me you lost your husband a couple of years ago. And I know you can still remember when you had to walk into that funeral home and go through the business part of it. You weren't prepared for that. You were overwhelmed. And all of these papers were put before you. And they're explaining it to you, but you're not comprehending what they're saying, because you just lost someone that you had been with for almost 50 years. But whatever they told you to sign, whatever they told you the cost was, you accepted it. You realize at the end of that, it was this $15,000 funeral. You're overwhelmed. You know, what are you going to do? But some kind of way you make it work. Well, I want to tell you that Legacy is here for the rescue, because Legacy, Mrs. Jones, is going to do, you told me that your daughter Beverly would be the one who is going to take care of everything. You have 6 children, but you said she's the most responsible. She's the youngest, she's the most responsible. We're going to make it easier for her. And I know you want that for her, because you don't want her to go through what you went through when her father passed away. So we're going to do 3 things. But first, we're going to assign a funeral advocate to the family. That person will be the liaison between the family and the funeral home. They're there to represent the family. Just think about that. You have a representative that's on your side, that's going to make certain that your family isn't taken advantage of on the worst day of their life. And they're going to do 3 things for your family. They're going to price shop. Now, let me ask you, do you have a preference funeral home? Were you pleased with the funeral home that you used for your husband? Okay, well, they're going to get the general price list from that funeral home, but they're also going to get the general price list from 2 other funeral homes in that geographical area. The reason they're doing this is because when they go back to the negotiating table with your funeral home, they have some power now. They have those other 2 price lists, and they're going to present to your funeral director. They're going to say, Mrs. Jones used you several years ago when she lost her husband. She was very pleased with your services. However, we have checked with ABC Funeral Home and XYZ. This is what they're willing to do for the family. What are you willing to offer the family? Now, you want to tell them this. Trust me on this. No funeral home is going to lose not 1 family member, because that's their reputation. That's their business. They know they're going to be in business from generation to generation, as long as they please that family, because that every member in that family one day is going to pass away. And they want that family to remember them and come to their funeral home. So they're going to either match that or even come a little lower. But trust me on this. They're not losing any money. You see, on the general price list, they have allowed for negotiations, but you don't know that, Mrs. Jones, but our professional negotiators know that. And they're going to negotiate line item by line item. And in the end, they're going to save the family anywhere from 30 to 80% of the cost of those services. That's a large savings there. Now, that's the second thing. The third thing they're going to do, you know, the three most expensive items on that general price list is the casket, the vault that goes to the cemetery, and your marker. Those three items are locked in for $3,600 for the rest of your life. From day one, from today's date, that is locked in. Now, you go ahead and live another 10, 20 years. You claim that. But when something happens, your family is only going to pay $3,600 for this. We don't compromise on quality. These are 18 gauge steel caskets. That's the top of the line. I'll relate that to your stainless steel appliances that you have there. You paid more for those because that's a finer steel. This is the same steel that's used on these these caskets are 18 gauge. Now, you have over 200 to choose from. Over 200. I don't know if you had an opportunity to see Aretha Franklin's funeral, but she had the full couch. We call it the full couch casket. And she showed off her red bottom shoes. You want to show off your red bottom shoes, Miss Jones? You can show off those red bottom shoes because you know what? One of that casket is in our selection of those 200. It's called the full couch casket. And it's still locked in for the $2,000. Isn't that amazing? Just to know that you're locking this in. But I want to share something with you. You see, Legacy is a membership. So what does that mean? There are benefits. I've just gone over these benefits with you. And guess what? These benefits can be with 4 other family members. 4 of the family members can have the same benefit. Isn't that great to know? Even your daughter, Beverly. That means when something happens to her, it's locked in for her for the rest of her life. And she'll have the negotiating power from our professional negotiators to make certain that the family is saving 30 to 80% of the cost of those services. The vault, this goes into the ground first. A lot of people don't see it, so they're not aware at that time. But if you are within the city limits, all cemeteries in the city limits, they do require this. If you are outside of the city limits, it's usually optional, but either way, this is locked in for you also. And your marker is locked in. Now the family they won't do your marker right away, but when they're ready to design your marker, they'll contact Legacy and this price is locked in and they'll design that marker and it will be shipped to the cemetery. All of this is taken care of. I know you remember what you went through. Now you can say, really, my family won't have to go through this? No, ma'am, they will not have to go through this because they have Legacy. And this is what Legacy is going to do. And I want to share something else with you. A lot of families don't realize this, but now that you have Legacy, your family really doesn't have to go into the funeral home. The only reason they go into the funeral home is to walk into that casket selection room and select the most expensive casket, which is right up front. You know how it was. You had just lost your husband. You all been married for almost 50 years. So you walked in that casket selection room and they had this beautiful casket. And you said, that's for my husband. I want the best for him. Then you go back and you sit down at that conference table and they're going over these figures with you. And the casket that you selected, $10,000. That doesn't include the services now. Now they have the services to that. And before you know it, it's almost $20,000. And you only have a $20,000 policy that you really wanted to leave for your family. And now they're eating into that. And you might even have to add to it. This won't happen with Legacy. This will not happen with Legacy. Because you're going to have that same $10,000 casket, that same $10,000 casket. We're locking it in today for $2,000 for the rest of your life. And you can go to our website. I'm going to leave you with a personal planning guide. And with that personal planning guide, I want you to fill it in, all your wishes, so that your family can honor your wishes. And you can even list the casket that you want so they'll know which one that you chose. Isn't that great to know that they won't have to go through this? We're taking away emotional stress, and we're taking away financial stress on the worst day of their life when they have lost you that they love so very much. So this is why we call it legacy and love, because you're showing them love by getting this, because you're making it so much easier for them. So this is what legacy will do. Now with legacy, we have a plan from Senior Life that's attached to this, that's going to make certain that those funds are available. And guess what? Unlike any other insurance policy that you have, and we're not here to replace what you have, we're here to save that so that can go to your family. They won't require a death certificate. They're going to get a report of death from the funeral home that will be faxed over to them. Once they receive that, your daughter will have these funds in her hand within 24 to 48 hours after your death. Now she's in control. She has this money in her hand. And in the meantime, the professional negotiator has negotiated that funeral cost. And let's say they've gotten it down to $5,000. And even getting it to that price, the funeral home still makes a profit. So now she knows how much the funeral service is going to be. So she knows what the check is going to be for. The funeral home knows how much they're receiving. There are no further negotiations. So when that funeral director goes to her home, and he will come to the home, at that point, all he's doing now is having her sign papers and decide on the day and time of your service. That's taken away all of that stress. Isn't that great that legacy has come to the rescue for your family? I know you wish you had known about legacy when you lost your husband, but you know about it now. And I know you don't want your family to go through what you went through. And so we're here for the rescue. So what I'm going to do now, Ms. Jones, the maximum amount that you can qualify for, and everyone qualifies, but there's a maximum amount because this is a final expense policy. And on a final expense policy, the maximum amount is $30,000. So I just want to show you, I'm going to write this down for you. Let's say and I'll know shortly what you qualify for. So let's say $30,000. Now, at time of death, here's what happens. You see this card, this is your membership card. This is what you're going to receive in the mail. And by the way, when you get this, I want you to contact me because see, I want to come back and I want to sit down with Beverly because I want her to understand what you have. So she'll know what to do because she is to call Legacy first. She will not call the funeral home. She is to call Legacy. And Legacy is going to then take charge and take over. So then she'll have this card. Legacy and Senior Life, they're a team. So Senior Life is going to cut a check to Legacy for this $3,600 that you locked this in. And now 10, 15 years later, it's still $3,600. So they're cutting a check for $3,600 to Legacy. Legacy is going to ship the casket to the funeral home within 24 hours. And just to assure you of this, by law, the funeral home must receive all merchandise that's delivered there for the deceased. So don't be concerned about that. They're going to ship the vault to the cemetery. So now you have $26,400 left that is sent to Beverly within 24 to 48 hours after your death. Now she has money because you did tell me you have your cemetery plots, but you haven't taken care of the opening and closing because that cemetery will not allow you to lock in that price. So whatever the cost of the opening and closing is, she has the cash money to take care of that. She has the cash money too. Now you said that you do want her to, you made it possible for her to keep the house. Well, great. However, she still has to pay the utilities until she decides what she wants to do. She might want to sell it, rent it out. I don't know what arrangements you've made for that, but you want to make certain that your utilities and things are still on. She has money to take care of that also. So that cash money, look what Legacy is doing for your family. So I know you can appreciate Legacy and love because now you have shown them love. You've shown them that you do not want them to have to be overwhelmed on the worst day of their lives and to have time to grieve for the loss of the one they love so dearly. So now I'll put some information into my iPad and we'll see exactly how much you qualify for and what that's going to be. And we can work it into your budget also. We're not just going to say it's this amount. No, we're going to work this into your budget so that you can take care of this on a monthly basis. So that's how I present Legacy And I'm open for any questions.
Wow, Ms. Fran, that was a really great role play of presenting legacy to the clients. And I noticed that you continue to reference the client's daughter's name or who's going to be the beneficiary. So why do you do that? In
That's
essence,
important. And I had already, you know, when we're doing the warm up and we're doing our survey and we ask them when something happens, who would take care of your arrangements, that's when you get the person's name. And usually in the warm up, they've told you they have children and how many children they have. And I'll say to them, you know, because this is true. I mean, I have one daughter and two grandsons, but I know when something happens to me, it'll be my youngest grandson that's able to take
yes,
care of everything. And
exactly.
so I'll say, you know, we know how our children are. So you told me that you have 4 girls and 2 boys. Now, who's going to be the responsible person to take care of everything on the worst day of their lives when they've lost you? And so they'll say, well, my youngest daughter, Beverly, and I write her name down. And from that point on, I'm referring to Beverly by her name. That's important because you know why? When I say Beverly, she's thinking, yeah, my daughter Beverly, you know, yes, you're going to make it much easier for her. Yes, Beverly, you know,
Exactly.
it,
Mhm.
it has an impact. Yes.
It's that support because you know what you're saying is, you know, legacy is going to be there for your daughter. Legacy is going to be there to support her. Legacy is going to be there to take the pressure off of her. So guys, that's what the legacy advocate does. You know, Miss Fran said that they will be assigned a professional funeral advocate, and that's, you know, one of the services, the concierge service that we provide when they call into the legacy hotline. They will be assigned that professional funeral advocate who's going to reach out and price shop the funeral. And, you know, we use those terms price shop and negotiate. So now with legacy, it's two parts there that that advocate does. They're going to first price shop the funeral home of the family's choice and two competitors in the area, in the same, you know, geographical area. And then they go to the family representative, whoever's making those arrangements, they still get to select which funeral home they want to use. And I think, Ms. Fran, that's very important too, that we always let them know that the family remains in full control the entire time. The family is in charge. You know, I was going over and over legacy in the home last week with a client, and I wasn't closing. I noticed that they were still a little bit reluctant, but as I continued to speak and ask questions, you know, they were in the under the understanding that um, we were going to be in control of the money from the policy.
Okay.
And I let them know, no, we're not going to hold the money. You know, you use the program if you want to use the program. The program is going to be there for you. The program is locked in, you know, with these rates for you. You know, if for whatever reason you decide that you don't want to use the program, that's also optional. You know, so, you know, just some information for our agents. Make sure the client understands that they're still in full control. Legacy works for them, you know. Mhm.
Jackie, when I tell them that, you know, I'm calling the beneficiary by name, I say
Yes,
Beverly will have cash in hand. I take my right hand and I scratch it because you know that's a symbol that when your right hand itch is money. And so
yeah,
I do that. I say she'll have this cash in hand, and they can relate to that. That she's gonna. And I say now she's in control because she
I
has the
love
money
it.
in hand.
Oh, exactly. So, you know, we're big on catchphrases and power words that we use in the selling process as we're doing presentations because the catchphrases and power words are what's going to resonate with the person you're presenting to, you know, the potential client. And so when you're listening to Ms. Fran, now somebody's line is unmuted and you're speaking. Okay, so when you're listening at Ms. Fran, listen at the verbiage, but also Ms. Fran, what stood out um, for me with your presentation is the voice infractions and how you're, you know, leaning forward in your body language and you're smiling at the client to let them know that this is going to be all right. It's going to be okay, you know, in a sense. So nodding your head So all of this comes into play, but the logistics of how legacy works is so important, and reassuring the client that, they don't want to leave that person they are expecting to handle those final arrangements. They want to be able to support that person and keep the process as simple as possible for them. So putting legacy in place is going to ensure that you leave them with some support to help get the job done. So Ms. Fran, we have a few questions here. Someone said, so you don't utilize the pitch pad, and I think they're making reference to when you said, I'm going to put some information in my device here, and we're going to see what you qualify for. So the question is, I guess, would be, do you use the pitch pad?
Oh, yes, definitely. I use that. As a matter of fact, what I say to them, I'll also say, I want to show you a 4-minute video. And I sort of, I make a joke about that, because once I said to one of my clients that it was a gentleman, I said, I want to show you a 4-minute video. I said, I think it's about 4 minutes. So he said to me, well, is it 4 minutes? Or I said, well, I tell you what, we're going to watch this together and I'm going to time it. So I'll know from now on if it's 4 or 5 minutes. So we laughed, and it's 4 minutes. So I say to them, I want to show you a 4-minute video. However, I have to get some information from you before I can get to the video. And that's when I'm sure that they all use this now. That's when I have my 3 pages here. Okay. My agent resource sheet.
Yes.
I fill in that information because I want to have a record of all of my clients, and I don't fill in every line on the agent resource sheet. I want to get their date of birth, their height, their weight, and I already know who the primary beneficiary is because they told me that earlier. And I'll get their medications. That's all I need at that point to get to my video, because I don't want to ask them at that point for their social. I don't want to ask them for their banking information. I want them to, I'm still building up trust. So I go into my Slice app and I'm putting in this information, and then I show them the video. Well, after the video, the next screen, because of the information that you've put in, it's going to be able to give you what they qualify for. And then it's going to give you your quotes. Now, what I do, that's when I take my pitch pad. And this is what I do. I always show them the maximum amount that they qualify for. It's something about telling that client, you qualify for the 30,000, because I told them that the max is 30,000. But if they didn't qualify for the 30,000 and they qualify for the 20 or the 10, I always show the maximum, no matter how much it's going to cost. We don't want to ever assume that they can't afford it. Never assume that. You never, seniors have, you don't assume. Okay, just don't assume. Now, I'm going to show 30,000 on my pitch pad, and then I'll go and I'll show, say, 20,000, and then I'll show 15,000. And what I'll do after I write all that down, I'll turn it towards them and I'll say, Mrs. Jones, congratulations, you qualified for our $30,000 plan. Now, there's 30,000 natural death, and in the event of accidental death, it's another 30,000. And that means if it's accidental death, is $60,000 that Beverly will get. That's the monthly premium for that. But I also did a 20,000 natural death, 20,000 accidental, which would then pay 40,000 to Beverly, and this is the monthly payment. And I did 15,000. Now, we don't want to go any lower than 15,000 because you've explained to me that you want to have some left over so they can take care of other incidentals. So I have 15,000 natural death, 15,000 accidental, which would now pay 30,000. And then you turn the pitch pad around to them and you put the pin there. You say, now I want you to circle the one that's going to work in your budget on a monthly basis, because this will be monthly for you. And then you sit back and you do not say one word, not one word, because the first person who speaks loses. If they have to study those figures for 30 minutes, you sit there quietly for 30 minutes, because if you speak first, you lost.
Yes, exactly.
I'll tell you something. They're either going to go with the max of the 30,000 or they're going to go in the middle. Very, very rarely will they go with the least amount. Very
That's
rarely.
right. Exactly. I
And
noticed
so
that too.
that's when I use my pitch pad. I always use my pitch pad. Always.
You know what we say, Miss Fran, and that's important. The reason to use that pitch pad is because people don't want to be sold, they want to buy. So when you lay those quotes out, those figures out, and they get to select which
Yes.
one they want, it feels like a purchase for them, not that someone, sold them something. And this is going to, offset, buyer's remorse because now they get to choose.
Yes.
And you've given them information so they can make an informed decision on what they want to buy. I love it.
Got
We do have a couple more questions.
okay.
And this is a good one, guys. How do you present when they want a cremation? How do we present in the value of legacy?
Legacy is still valuable because what you want them to understand is even though they'll have a cremation, a funeral director still has to be involved because they will still have to bring you into their care. And this is another terminology I want you to keep in mind when you're telling them, if you ever get to a point where you tell them about how everything is being done. When I go through for the general price list under transportation. Transportation means at time of death, Mrs. Jones, this is the fee for bringing you into their care. You don't want to say for taking you into the funeral home. That's, bringing you into their care because they're bringing you into their care. And so with cremation, there still has to be a charge for transportation. There still has to be a charge for the professional services of the funeral director and staff. There still is a charge for, and then also, this is what you want to ask them whenever they want cremation. Let your next question be to them, Mrs. Jones, do you want a memorial service with your cremation, with your body present? Ask them that because sometimes you want to remind them that if they have family and they want the cremation, it's important for the family to have closure. So even if they don't want the body present, a memorial service so that that family can have closure. Because a lot of people don't understand, what's really involved with funerals and cremations. But legacy is still there because your urn is now locked in for $99. And these are beautiful urns. And that $99 includes tax and shipping. It isn't $99 plus tax plus shipping. It's $99 with tax and shipping included. And that will be shipped to the funeral home or directly to your loved one, however they want to receive it.
Exactly. Okay, so just to touch on the cremation part again, and you said there would be, some additional fees, because the funeral home will charge for bringing them into their care. So normally we talk about the professional service fee, and that's to pick the body up. A lot of people they don't realize that even the moment the funeral home pick the body up, there is a charge. So how does that factor in with the overall cost of the funeral and all of that?
Well, if they're usually the average cost for a cremation with a memorial service with the body present is around $4,000. Because also if for cremations, they won't need a casket from Legacy. The funeral homes have what we refer to, people would say it's a rental casket, but our terminology is it's a ceremonial casket.
Okay.
The insert is new. Each time they use that casket, it's a new insert, but it's a ceremonial casket. So that's going to come directly from the funeral home. But again, Legacy is there to negotiate that cost.
Right.
There's a cost for that ceremonial casket.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so they're there to negotiate because even with a cremation, you have the funeral home, the funeral director, and so they're there to negotiate those prices for you. And that's important because I did a presentation last week and this lady told me that her son just died last year and she had a cremation service for him. the funeral home charged her $8,000. I said, $8,000 for a cremation service? She says,
Mhm.
yes, they had, they charged me for a limousine. I said, did you use a limousine? She says, no, but they said they had to charge me for it. It's sad.
Oh,
How,
wow.
and I know this funeral home. I walked over to her. I said, just whisper in my ear, what was the name of that funeral home? And when she told me, I knew the one because I've heard about that before. But that was, and she said they even charged me for police escorts. I said, police escorts? Well, did you go? Where did you go? She says, I didn't. So you see how some funeral homes will take advantage of a person on the worst year of their lives because they don't
Yeah.
know. There was no reason for her to pay $8,000 for a cremation.
Wow.
With
And
legacy,
Miss
that would have.
Fran, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
Go ahead.
it just shows us that legacy still has value for that client that is choosing a cremation, because now that's the protection that you leave in place for your loved ones so that they are still not taken advantage of. Because legacy, whether you're purchasing funeral merchandise from legacy or not, they will still call and negotiate any costs related to that, those arrangements. So, we must know this. It's not just about whether they want the funeral merchandise or not, um, purchase the funeral merchandise or not. Legacy will still service the family, protecting their interests and making sure they're not overcharged for any services that's being provided. Wow, thank you for that. So we do have a couple of other questions here. Um, Someone said, I said all that to a family member, and they said they already have purchased the mausoleum and they only needed the casket.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, what you want to know about a final expense policy is that it's not just for your funeral expenses. You could have medical bills. You're
Mhm.
going to have other bills. This is cash money that's coming to your beneficiary within 24 to 48 hours after your death. Yes, you have your mausoleum. Now there will be an opening and closing for that mausoleum that they will have to pay.
Mhm.
And most cemeteries charge the same amount to open and close a mausoleum as they do to dig the grave. There's no, I know here in Houston that these these cemeteries that are owned by SCI is $2,000 to open a mausoleum, and it's $2,000 to dig a grave. And those
Mhm.
continue to go up because the price isn't locked in. So they still need legacy. Legacy is not going to negotiate with the cemetery, but because of senior life insurance attached to legacy, the family is going to have the cash money to pay those costs for the cemetery.
Mhm.
So that's important for them to still have legacy and senior life.
Yes, ma'am. And for the young lady, Jesse posted
Okay.
the question about that. What you want to realize is that they do not have to purchase all
Okay.
the funeral merchandise. It's not like a package. So if they only need a casket, they only pay the $2,000 for the casket. If
Correct.
they only want to order the monument, they only pay for a monument when they
Okay.
order it. So,
Correct.
we let them see the overall price for all three products, would be the $3,600, or they are able to just select the products that they want. And that's important to know too, because even with the military arrangement, with the National Cemetery, they will not need, a monument. They will not need a vault, but they still have to purchase their casket. And so they don't have to purchase all three products. They can purchase them individually. And that's why they're broken down in the legacy presentation flyer that you can order from the agent store under marketing supplies. It's broken down price per product. Yeah, so they're not required. And even if they decide they don't want to purchase any of the products, Legacy will still be there, as Ms. Fran just explained, to service the family, to make sure that they negotiate on all of the service fees and that related to that arrangement. Okay, so thank you, Ms. Fran, for that. Oh, I just lost my screen here. Zoom keeps kicking me out. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, so I've got to get back to our questions. So I need someone to, go ahead, Ms. Fran, if you can read the next question. Here it is. Okay, so the next question is, what if the person has pre-needs in place with a funeral home? How would you present legacy to overcome that objection? That's a good
Glad
one.
you asked that. Yes.
Yes.
Because we can overcome a pre-need, we can overcome any insurance policy that they have. Remember, what you want to stress to them is that their final expense just doesn't mean your funeral. There's a possibility there are medical bills that are left behind that have to be paid, and life continues to go on, Mrs. Jones. So these utilities still have to be paid. So cash money now is coming directly to Beverly. Your pre-need, that money will go directly to the funeral home. None of those funds will go to your beneficiary. That's important to know. That's the difference in a pre-need and a final expense. On a pre-need, the funeral home is the beneficiary, and the funeral home is receiving all of that. So it's important for Beverly to have some cash money on hand because it's going to be needed now. You got to pay for the opening. She'll have to pay for the opening and closing of the grave space. There will be other incidentals. They cannot lock in the price on the escorts. That cost is controlled by the city. And
Yes.
so escorts prices continue to go up. You cannot lock that price in. So she's going to have that. And on most pre-needs, the casket spray is not included. She'll have that cost also. So now she has money for those other incidentals that are not part of that pre-need.
So there's going to be some additional
Oh,
cost
yes.
that's not factored into that pre-need
Pre-need.
also.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So the other thing too, that we usually, remind clients of is that, they need to have money on hand. They may have to actually pay for somebody, a family member, to come in from out of state or out of town, time off from work, extra supplies for the home that where everyone is going to be gathering. So there's always, a need for the extra income or the extra funds to be able to, even host, people coming in and out of the home. hmm So these are just things that we want to be mindful that we need to talk about, guys. At the, when we're overcoming these objections, we have to remind them that it's not just even for, the service fees. Okay, so the next question we have here is, let's see if we can get back here. Trying to get that screen up. Okay. The next question is, cremation service is $3,600. No, we're not saying the cremation service itself is $3,600. The $3,600 is the cost of the funeral merchandise if you're purchasing, on average, the casket, the vault, and the headstone. Okay, so Fran, a question here says, you always give the top rate for the product they qualify for, regardless of their age. That's when
Yes,
you're
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. You mean the maximum that they call? Yes, yes, I do, because I just a couple of months ago, I wrote a lady, 85 years old, and she was modified, of course, and I showed her the maximum amount, and it was going to be $299 a month, and she took it. So you never want to assume. 2 days ago, I met with the gentleman. He's stage 4 cancer, so of course that's a guaranteed issue.
Yes.
And he could only qualify for the 10,000, which was a little over $100 a month. And I did the pitch pad. Okay, I showed him the max that he qualified for. I did a 10, I did an 8, and I didn't go. I did 10, 8, and a 7. I told him I wasn't going to go below 7 because we wanted to make certain. And I turned the pitch pad to him and put the pen down, and he took the pen and he circled the 10,000.
Okay, awesome. So, Ms. Fran, another question is, what amount does a person generally get when they want a cremation?
Well, it depends on how well they've understood about final expenses, okay? Because remember, you're telling them that it's not just for the funeral, but now there's money that will be needed to continue in the lifestyle that the family that you're leaving behind, so they can readjust to your income no longer coming in, because now your income is going to be cut off. So it's going to depend, and I'll have families to say, well, I want to leave an extra 5,000 for my 3 kids, or 5,000 each. So it all depends on, in your warm up, what the information you've gotten from them to realize how much more they're going to need. But if they just want, I have a lady that I just saw yesterday, and she's on a fixed income. I mean, truly fixed income. And she wants just a cremation. She has no children and really no siblings, she said. So she wants just a cremation. Well, when I said fixed income, she told me, she says, I can't afford any more than $20 a month. And so I showed her $1,000 would take care of a direct cremation. So you know, sometimes you're going to have families, and that's all they can do. She was struggling trying to pay a $147 light bill. As a matter of fact, we were sitting there with a fan because she said she refused to turn the air conditioning unit on because the light bill was just so expensive. But it will all depend on you listening to them and what all they if they want if they want a cremation with a memorial service, then you're going to show them that's going to be at least $4,000, and you want to have some left over. And always ask the family this when they say they want to be cremated. Always ask them, what are your plans for the final resting place of your cremains? That's important. You'll have some say, well, I'm going to leave it with my daughter, I'm going to leave it with my husband. But eventually, your cremains must have a final resting place. Do you want them to be in a mausoleum niche? Do you want them to be buried? Do you want them to be scattered at sea? Does your family know about this? It's important. When I was working at the funeral home, I've had families who've come and left those cremains on the doorstep of the funeral home because they inherited them and they didn't want them. But that was still someone. And so then we have to go and turn them over to the state. It's not, you know, you don't just, because you're cremated, you were still once a loving person. So find out how they plan for their cremains in the end, because they will too have to have a final resting place.
Wow, thank you for that. That's something to think about, guys. So now when you say a direct cremation, can you expound on that a little bit, you know, for us? What is
That
it?
means is at time of death, she will be brought from place of death directly to the funeral home and then to the crematory. There will be no type of service, nothing but direct from place of death to the funeral home to the crematory.
So, you know, and this is, I guess, from my mindset here is, I'm always thinking about that professional service fee, which I always equate to the moment they pick the body up. There's already a $2,000 to $4,000 charge on the account. And that's one reason why we advise our clients to call Legacy before they call the funeral home, because once the funeral home has the body, it's going to cost the family if they decide to move the body to another funeral home. So that direct cremation, then under those circumstances, who picks up the body or who delivers the body to the funeral home?
Oh, the funeral director has to go and receive the body into their care, wherever they pass away. If they pass away at the hospital, in hospice, or at home. You see, so there's still the professional services of the funeral director and staff, but on a direct cremation, that's always less, because you're not going to have when we say staff, that's the staff that's going to serve at the actual funeral service.
Right. Okay.
That's staff. But on a direct cremation, the only staff member involved there is the funeral director, who picks up the body. For example, I'm looking at a general price list now, and the direct cremation here is it's $1,995 for a direct cremation. Okay.
Yes.
And that includes them bringing the body into their care, the transportation to the crematory, and that's it. Now that price can be negotiated, because I know funeral homes here who will do a direct cremation for as little as $900, because it's direct. And they can still do that with a profit. So that $19.95 can be negotiated by the funeral advocate to save the family
Wow.
money there too. Mhm.
Wow. Okay, guys, that there you go. Thank you for that. We can still negotiate on the cost of a direct cremation. That was a nugget, so I hope everybody captured that. Okay, so we have more questions, Miss Fran. Okay, it says, oh, one point I wanted to point out, Miss Fran, and you can, share your thoughts on this. Normally, when someone says that they want to have a cremation, how do you ask them how did they choose that? What made that decision? What caused them to make that decision? How do you
So
ask that?
it's a personal preference, but it's a personal preference for them. You can find out if it's because of cost,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes it is, but I'm finding that more and more people are going that way just to make it easier on their family, because cremation memorial services, I've officiated at quite a few, and they're much easier on the family. But you can ask, uh, but it's how you develop a relationship with that person. Sometimes you can say, well, why, or I'll just say, well, it's your personal preference, and it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like to say to each agent partner too, I would recommend that you just you can go to any funeral home in your area and get a general price list. It's always good to have that general price list so you can point out to families those prices and how Legacy is going to be able to save the money on those prices. And also point out on every general price list, it must state the effective date of that general price list. And you can just point out, say, now, I just picked up one because my godson owns funeral home, and he just had a price increase October 1st. They can increase those prices as often as they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to get a new general price list, and it says these prices are effective October 1st, 2021. Now, if he decides that he wants and any item that he increases on here by law, he has to then do a whole new general price list. If he goes up $500 on the services of the professional services of the funeral director and staff, and he's only increasing that price, he still has to do a whole new general price list effective the date that he's doing that. And he informed me that he just went up on his prices, which he did. And so go by. I went to one of the most expensive funeral homes here in Houston, and that's George S. Lewis. That's where our former President Bush and his wife Barbara Bush, that was the funeral home that they went to. And Marvin Zindler, everyone from Houston will know Marvin Zindler. That's the funeral home that officiated his services. So I was in the area, and I said, well, let me stop and get a general price list from them, because I know it's expensive. And very well presented. It comes in a packet, and they give you a package of Kleenex with George S. Lewis on it, and they give you a mint. I mean, very well done. And so I went back to my car, and I was just so excited to see. And I opened it up. I couldn't believe it. I mean, $60,000, $70,000. And I'm thinking, are they serious? But yes, they are, And so and I keep that price list too, because I mean, that is quite a comparison. But it's good to have a general price list in your possession. And also, you want to find out in your area about the VA, what they offer the veterans. VA, you would think that they offered the same thing to veterans throughout the nation. They don't even offer the same thing to veterans throughout the state. When I was working the funeral home area in Killeen, Texas, there, the veteran, of course, gets everything free, but for his spouse, he has to pay $800. Here in Houston, the veteran and the spouse, everything is free. The burial space, the opening and closing of the grave, the vault, and the marker. So here in Houston, the veteran is saving at least $15,000 for him and his spouse when it comes to cemetery. And as Jackie pointed out, they only need the casket. And you want to, with veterans, always ask them this: Do you know where your DD 214 is? See, the more information you have that you can give them, all veterans know that their DD 214, that's their discharge papers, but let them know how important it is, not only for them to know where it is, but for the ones who are being left behind to know where it is. Because here's what happens if they can't find that DD 214. The field director will notify the VA that the family cannot locate the DD 214. The VA is going to tell them it will take us 72 hours to get back with you before we can confirm. Now, what they're verifying is that they actually were in the service. Now, years ago, I understand the main headquarters, I think it was in Virginia, was burned down. And so a lot of that information was destroyed. This was before we had what we have today, where we have computers and everything to back up all of this information. So let that veteran know this. If they cannot locate your DD 214, you will not be buried at the VA cemetery. Will not. And so when they understand the importance of that, and they don't have it, then now they can get it and they can let their spouse know where it is. So at time of death, all of that's taken care of. Because I know this happened to a young lady who had actually served 20 years in the service. They couldn't find her DD 214 and she wasn't buried at the VA cemetery. So let them know the importance of that. See, the more information you're able to give them, the more they're going to trust you now. I mean, you know about their DD 214 and you know the importance of them being able to locate it and also let their loved one know where it is and what happens if it can't be located.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful, Ms. Fran. Thank you so much. That was very valuable information regarding, benefits, funeral benefits for veterans. Now you can go to the Consolidated Agent Resources library, and we have, documents there regarding VA benefits. And as Ms. Fran pointed out, it can vary state to state or even interstate, in-state, different counties may have different, guidelines for their veterans, okay? So we're gonna get through our next couple of questions and then we're gonna get ready to wrap up our training call for today, but some additional questions. Someone wanted to know, how is the body presented at a memorial service with the cremation? So it's a memorial service, Ms. Fran, so the body's generally not there.
Well, no, it's optional. They can have, that's why if they're having a memorial service, you want to ask them, do you want your body present? Because sometimes they will want the body present. And then if they want the body present, that means it will have to be embalmed. And also let them know that by law, you want to tell them that embalming is not required by law, but it is required by the funeral home. If that body is going to be over, they can hold a body up to 3 days without embalming. So, and there's a certain culture that they bury within 24 hours of the death of their loved ones because they don't believe in embalming.
Okay, so are you saying that we can actually have a funeral within 48 hours or 72 hours of death without embalming the body?
For 3 days, they can go for 3 days without being embalmed.
Oh gosh, I just thought that if the body was going to be exposed to the public, it had to be embalmed.
No, oh no. The Jewish culture, they do not embalm, and they bury within 24 hours of their death.
Okay.
And they bury north to south and not east to west.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to learn as much as you can because every culture is different.
Yes, ma'am. And that does help when you're sitting down with someone of different cultural, because you do need to know a little bit about, the cultural differences. And then that way you can speak to what would benefit them and what they would be interested in.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Love it. Okay. So next question, if someone is modified or guaranteed issue, do they still get benefits within 24 to 48 hours? And I think they're referring to, do we pay the death claim within 24 to 48 hours if it's a modified or guaranteed issue, client?
But if it's modified, you want to explain to them that if something happens within the first 2 years of the policy, they will get all of their premiums back plus 10% interest, and stress that 10% interest because no bank is going to pay them 10%. But what you want to also tell them is this, and you can, that what they will appreciate about senior life is senior life puts accidental death on every policy, regardless of your age. Most insurance companies, if you have a policy with them and you reach age 65 and you had accidental death, that rider drops off. And if you are 65 or older, you cannot get accidental death. But senior life is putting accidental death on every policy. So the benefit of this is, even though your natural death will not go into effect for the first 2 years, the base of accidental death, if it's a $10,000 policy. So the $10,000 accidental death benefit goes into effect day one. After the second year, if it's accidental death, it then will pay $20,000. So that's a feature that you want to point out to them for that modified and the guaranteed issue where they have to wait 3 years.
Exactly. Thank you, Ms. Fran. The other question is, you said that a death certificate is not needed by senior life at time of death, but what does the beneficiary need to receive the benefit? I guess when it to get the money.
The funeral home will fax over to senior life what is referred to as a report of death, and senior life will accept that.
Thank you. Okay, so when people have already purchased their plot, does the family still have to pay for opening and closing at the cemetery?
Yes, they do.
Yes. Okay, opening and closing of the grave, because when you purchase the plot, they're not going to dig it up right then and there. Okay.
No. And that's what's a surprising cost to the family. They don't realize it until that time, and you must pay that or they will not open the grave.
I know. I've heard stories where it wasn't paid and the funeral was, taking place, and and it takes them, you can't just say go dig the grave. It has to be scheduled. So normally, they wouldn't be digging a grave. Do they dig it the day before or the day of, or how does that happen?
They usually do it the day of, the morning of. They have the equipment to do it. Sometimes they might do it the day before, but they do, depending on what time the service is going to arrive.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And then it depends on the weather also. Because I've seen times when they weren't even able to actually do a burial because of the rain.
Okay, I understand. So I have a question as well about an additional charge dealing with veteran or national cemetery burials. A lot of time veterans have their funerals on the weekend, but the national cemeteries are not open on the weekend. So then the body has to go back to the funeral home for a layover. Is there an additional charge for the funeral home to hold that body after the funeral, but they can't do the burial maybe for the next 2 days because of timing or whatever?
No, there's no extra charge. They will, if because you're correct, the VA will not bury on a Saturday, Monday through Friday only. And they're very prompt about time. So if you have an arrival time, an ETA, the funeral director will let the minister know you can't go beyond, you can't really preach 2 hours on this. We have to leave at a certain time to arrive at the VA, because if you do not arrive at your scheduled time, then you will just have to make another appointment. But Monday through Friday, and if you have that service on a Friday, if you have the service on a Saturday, you can have the funeral service on a Saturday, and the funeral director will know that they are to take the body back to the funeral home, and then the family will meet them at the VA cemetery that Monday for burial.
Okay. So thank you, Ms. Fran. Another question here is, what do we say to overcome the objection? My health insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, should cover any leftover medical bills, so I should not have any remaining bills. How do we overcome that when we're adding the value of legacy, being able to save the family money for those expenses?
Well, Medicare and Medicaid is not going to always cover all of your medical bills. And what I would do, because I've done Medicare before. I mean, if you can say, do you have your Medicare? Because they get a booklet each year to tell them what's covered, and
Mhm.
they're going to cut off at a point. They're not going to pay all of your
Right.
medical
They're
bills.
not gonna pay all of it. I experienced that. Okay, so we have a question. If someone passes away, they don't have family, and they don't have plans, um, what, what happens, to someone who dies without family or without plans for final arrangement?
That's a sad situation. That's why you want to really talk to them about legacy, because I think everyone should have dignity with their service. And if they don't have family and they don't have plans, then the state takes over, and they're put in what we refer to as a pompous grave that's unmarked, and no one will ever know where you are. So you don't want that. You want to have dignity with with, when you leave. That's what I would tell them. I always say, God gave me this life, and when I go back to Him, I want to go back to Him with dignity. So, but that's what would happen.
Yes,
It
ma'am.
would be very sad.
Right, right. We normally call it Pottersfield. We have, a cemetery here in Columbia that we call the Pottersfield. Someone unidentified, that's where they're buried. No one claims the body.
That's right.
Okay. So now the other thing is, what do you do if a funeral home won't give you a general price list?
No, they must. They know that. They will be fine. So you're not going to have any problems getting a general price list. When you ask for a general price list, they will gladly give it to you. They know the law when it comes to that. As a
Okay.
matter of fact, by law, they have to give the family a general price list too when they come in to make those arrangements.
Mm-hmm.
So you won't have a problem. I walked into George S. Lewis, like I said, and I was dressed very casual. I think I might have even very, very casual. I didn't look as though I had the kind of money that they were charging, but
Yeah.
with a smile, they gave me the general price list with all the bells and whistles in a folder, and the tissue paper, and clean mints, and you need even water. I even got the water bottle, so they will give it to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So another question here. I live in North Carolina. If my body had to be shipped to Long Island, New York, would Legacy handle that? And does Legacy negotiate the total cost of the whole funeral, or just saving money on caskets? I just buried my mother-in-law in April. She had no insurance. Funeral was $12,000, and be it would have been 32,000 if I didn't already have a plot for her. Okay, we got it. So will Legacy negotiate transferring of the body state to state?
Yes, that's all part of the professional service. That's all part of the services that's on that general price list. That's where they're going to save the family the 30 to 80%. See, Legacy is not only locking in the price on the merchandise for 3,600, but at time of death, now they're going to save the family 30 to 80% off the cost of those services. And definitely when it will include two funeral homes now, because you have the funeral home that's receiving you into their care in this city, but then you have another funeral home that has to receive you when you arrive there. So you really want Legacy to negotiate those costs, and they will do that. Yes.
So it's still resting.
Okay, is the accident or death benefit have a box to check off?
Oh,
Okay, so guys, never uncheck the accidental death benefit. If you look under in the Slice app, when you get to the quote page, the accidental death benefit box is there. It's already checked, as well as the legacy assurance box is there, and it's already checked. They're highlighted in red towards the bottom of that page, the quote page on the Slice. Never uncheck those riders. Never uncheck them, okay? If your line is unmuted, please mute your line. Thank you. Now, next question. Let's see. One sec. Okay, somebody said that they were denied the funeral price list before. Okay, good questions, guys. We're gonna move forward to our next slide. Ms. Fran, thank you so much, for sharing your expertise in the area of final wishes in the legacy program, and how we overcome objections. The more that we know about final wishes and final arrangements, the better we're going to be able to inform the clients and help them make informed decisions, but especially the value that legacy assurance brings to a family. You know, for me personally, this is very personal. Legacy is very personal for me because I understand what it's like, and I've been a victim of being taken advantage of prior to having my legacy in place. And I know now with peace of mind, I won't ever have to worry about that happening to my daughter when, you know, she's making my arrangements. And so legacy is very personal to me. And I'm a believer in this program because I have seen what it does to help families. You know, a client just a year ago, funeral home quoted them $15,000, guys, and we got that funeral through Legacy. The funeral was done for $7,000. And it's very important that we assure the clients that nothing changes but the price. And as Michael Burns likes to say, you have a discounted funeral, but you'll never have a cheap funeral. Okay? So, guys, be bold out there, be confident, go out here and share legacy assurance with everyone because everybody can use legacy assurance. No matter how much insurance they don't have legacy until they have a policy with Senior Life Insurance Company, and that's you.